My mom replaced me with my stepdad's kids at family gatherings. So I walked away and I am 27 years old and go by Andrew. This narrative chronicles my connection with my mom from great to nearly non-existent. I was a perfect son for a woman growing up. When I was 8, my parents split. Although I lived mostly with dad, weekends with mom were the best. We would hike, tinker around her house, and she would always tell me how proud she was. For this reason, what happened later on hurts greatly. Things started to change when I turned 13. Mom began courting Ethan, a man with 2 children, Michelle and Sam. Michelle was 10 years old. Sam was 12. I was first rather eager. More folks to hang about then? Incorrect. Everything changed when they moved in. Ethan left his job to, as I say, focus on the kids. Mom, who already worked her tail off, had to put in more overtime to pay the bills. She was hardly here at all suddenly. And when she was, Ethan and his children's happiness dominated everything. Though I tried to follow the flow, it was clear I belonged not to their tiny family. Dinner talks revolved mostly around Sam's soccer events and Michelle's dance performances. My achievements, such as winning an essay contest or earning straight A's, were little noticed. Vacations fit their schedules, and I began to feel like an afterthought. I recall one summer I wanted to see my grandparents, but Ethan suggested we attend a theme park as Michelle had never been to one. Guess whose plans were called off? High school was when things went from terrible to worse. Mom had been saving money for a college fund since I was small. Though it wasn't a full ride or anything, it was expected to be somewhat helpful. Then in my junior year, Dad informed me Sam's private school tuition had been paid for from funds. Ethan persuaded Mom that he needed a better environment because Sam was having trouble adjusting to public school. I didn't even hear from Mom, by the way. The news was broken by Dad. When I eventually faced Mom, she stated Sam needed it more, and we would work things out for my college. We didn't, with a hint of spoilers. Mom hardly helped. She always claimed she was broke. Dad ended up borrowing loans to support me. Mom missed my high school graduation about this time. That same day, Michelle participated in a dancing competition. Ethan persuaded her that her event was more significant. I recall not seeing her in the audience while seated in the auditorium studying it. She hardly called at all. And when she did, she seemed as though it was not really important. I had virtually ceased visiting Mom's place by the time I started college. Every time I went over, I felt like I was invading. Ethan would make these disparaging remarks about how so busy I was that I neglected time for family dinners. Naturally, the dinner still revolved mostly around Sam and Michelle. Every attempt I made to discuss my own life was dismissed. I once acknowledged finding difficulty in a demanding subject, and Ethan started talking about Sam's med school ambitions right away. It was as though I never really existed. I made attempts to correct things. I would suggest lunch with just Mom, but somehow Ethan and the kids usually ended up going along. Mom would tell me I was too sensitive or that I was misinterpreting things if I ever mentioned how alienated I felt. It was like pounding my head against a stone wall. Though it developed gradually, the bitterness finally struck me when I considered how many promises Mom had violated. Though her actions stated otherwise, she used to assure me I was her first concern. Ethan made sure I understood my place in their family, that of the outside observer looking in. I received a generic gift card one Christmas when Michelle and Sam were getting these thoughtful customized gifts. Though I tried to ignore it, it stung. I stopped trying finally as well. Every contact with Mom seemed like a reminder that Ethan's children were more vital than me. She seemed to overlook how far I would grow. Or if she did, she didn't seem to care enough to act about it. Our relationship was barely hanging by a thread when I graduated from college. Looking back, losing my relationship with my mom wasn't the toughest thing. She was beginning to see nothing wrong about the way things had gone. Though her behavior obviously suggested otherwise, she really felt she was being fair. Ethan, also, always made sure I understood exactly where I belonged in their family, on the outside observing in. My contact with Mom had dropped to the sporadic text or holiday card following college. Still, I clung to this small shard of optimism that things would turn around. That hope suffered much when I learned from pictures on social media about her 50th birthday celebration. It was more than just a laid-back supper or whatever. It was this grand, lavish celebration with decorations, cuisine, and what appeared to be a live band. Along with a lot of extended family, Ethan, Michelle, and Sam were there. Who else wasn't? To find out why I hadn't been invited, I phoned Mom. She dismissed it at first, believing it had to be a mistake. Then she blamed Ethan, saying he had taken care of the guest list and must have overlooked including me. Forgotten. Right. The images spun a different narrative. Every element of that celebration screamed carefully planned. Yet her own kid hadn't made the cut somehow. She promised to make it up to me. But, shockingly, I never heard from her following that. Not long thereafter, Michelle became engaged. And speculate on how I learned about her engagement party? Once more, on social media. I didn't even give Mom a call this time. It felt intentional at this point since I knew the drill. She would pretend Ethan had arranged it and forgotten me, claiming it was a small gathering. I lacked the strength though to approach her. Realizing I had been kicked from the family group chat delivered the last blow. I only realized as a cousin brought up a family cookout I knew nothing about. I checked, and my phone showed the chat gone. When I approached my cousin about it, she appeared somewhat awkward, saying something about how Ethan had most likely cleaned the chat to help it be more under control. From then on, I learned about family occasions either from social media posts or secondhand. Seeing how unhappy I was, my father urged me to confront it head-on rather than allowing the bitterness to fester. Though I wasn't convinced it would help, I resolved to give it one more attempt. Unannounced, one Saturday, I drove to Mom's place. Ethan at the door responded. He seemed startled and remarked it wasn't a good time as they were in the middle of something. I could hear people and laughter from the backyard. Still another event I hadn't been invited to. He invited me nowhere at all. A few days later, my cousin told me Mom had purchased Sam a brand new automobile for his birthday. The same woman who had claimed financial difficulties while I was in college could hardly help with my tuition. The automobile was a sparkling new SUV. The kind you might find a parent giving a child as a prize for something significant. To get through college, I had been working part-time jobs and borrowing money. Around this time, I began therapy since I felt as though I was carrying an intolerable weight. My therapist guided me in separating a lot of the uncertainty and hurt I had been experiencing. Mom's actions were clearly not random. They were a pattern. Every choice she made seemed to put Ethan and his children first, while I was at most an afterthought. Mom turned it around on me when I at last plucked up the bravery to contact her and face her about everything. She stated I was blowing everything out of proportion and jealous of Michelle and Sam. It resembled talking to a wall. She didn't pay attention to any of the particular instances I presented, that of missing my graduation or the college fund. Rather, she discounted my worries as my being too sensitive. A few close pals I vented to were all on my side. Mom's behavior was inappropriate. They agreed. And they urged me to establish limits. I started considering what that would look like for the first time. Thanksgiving counted as the last straw. Mom spent it with Ethan's extended family, and once more I wasn't invited. She apologized weekly by text when I brought it up, saying she hadn't understood I would feel excluded. With her, it was a pattern. Speaking the very minimum to keep things calm, but never really trying to improve. Ethan phoned me a few days later. He thought I was treating Mom unfairly and openly accused me of stressing their family out. That call had almost ridiculous chutzpah. He obviously only wanted me to quit rocking the boat. He was not interested in solving anything. It dawned on me at that. Every effort I had taken to mend the connection had been one-sided. Rebuilding what we had lost did not appeal to Mom. The dynamic as it was made her comfortable, and I was the only one battling to alter it. It was draining. I stopped being able to do it. I chose to totally back off. I reminded myself I wouldn't get in touch once again until she proved she was ready to meet me midway. I began first paying more attention to my own mental health than to trying to hang on to a relationship that obviously didn't matter to her. I told Mom straight out that I wouldn't participate unless she really tried to have me included in her family after resolving to distance myself from her. I was simply seeking the same fundamental respect and acknowledgement Michelle and Sam received without issue. I wasn't asking for much. I emailed her outlining this, and days extended into weeks, then months. She stopped entirely from getting in touch. It first seemed like a relief. There was no more half-hearted apology or contemptuous justification. But the silence became intolerable with time. Over this period, my father was my rock. He urged me to concentrate on the elements of my life under my control, my job, my friendships, and my interests. His encouragement helped me to begin giving my work my whole attention. It turned out to pay off. A few months later, I was promoted with increased responsibilities and a pay raise. For the first time in a long time, I felt as though I was on firm ground creating a life free from Mom's approbation. I started hearing rumors from extended family just when I believed everything had calmed down. Ethan had been disparaging me, calling me selfish and unappreciative, spreading gossip about me. I was the one separating the family, he said. He had definitely omitted any reference to the years of seclusion and failed promises. Ethan had been guiding Mom's actions from the start, so one of my cousins drew me aside at a family gathering and confirmed what I had been hypothesizing for some time. He had allegedly urged her to concentrate on Michelle and Sam since following their parents' divorce, they needed stability. I suppose stability didn't apply to me. My therapist advised Mom to draft a letter. The intention was to express all I had been experiencing, free from the pressure of an instantaneous reply. It was about closing doors for me, not about persuading her to change. I poured my heart into the letter, listing every occasion I felt passed over and replaced. I didn't forward it straight away as I finished. Not sure whether I would ever. A few weeks later, my mailbox turned over a wedding invitation. Michelle sent it. Just the conventional card with the date, time, and venue. The envelope lacked even a personal note. It seemed like a secondary concern, like someone realized they needed to invite me last minute to prevent looking awful. I resolved not to go. I knew it would simply be another occasion when I would feel like an alien. Refusing the invite set off another drama cycle. Mom called me, charging me with being conceited and petty. She demanded that I go to the wedding to keep the peace and said it wasn't fair to Michelle to drag our issues into her special day. It was the same script she'd used for years. Everything was about keeping Ethan and his kids happy, no matter how much it cost me. Not out of spite, but more because I felt unwelcome. I told her I wasn't attending the wedding. She didn't appreciate it. Once Ethan started using social media, things got more intense. He didn't specifically identify me, but it was clear who he was referring to when he tweeted this protracted passive-aggressive tirade about unappreciative family members unable to put aside their egos for one day. While several extended relatives responded to agree with him, a few messaged me personally to express their support. One uncle told me he respected my self-awareness in refusing to let Ethan's pranks rule me. During this period, I relied mostly on my therapist and friends. They reminded me that even if it offended some, I was right to create limitations. Their encouragement enabled me to keep to my choice in the face of Mom's guilt-tripping and internet drama. Then arrived the flash of insight. I came to see I was done putting up with emotional manipulation and contempt. For those who obviously didn't regard me, I wasn't going to keep stooping over backwards. So be it if Mom and Ethan chose to cast me as the villain. I was not going to squander any more effort to show them my value. Not out of wrath, but more because I had to speak my piece once and for once. I began getting ready for a last confrontation. This time, it was about finding closure and at last closing this chapter behind me, not about saving the relationship. I thought it was time to meet with Mom personally, but without Ethan lurking about. I wanted to arrange everything. I wanted to get it all off my chest rather than try to mend it. I phoned her and said that we meet in a neutral venue, a cafe not far from her place. She consented, but I could tell she wasn't exactly delighted about it. I never wasted any time when we got together. I began with the most obvious problems: the years of exclusion, the unfulfilled promises, the ongoing preference toward Ethan's children. I didn't hold back, going over every instance that had wounded me. From skipping my graduation to her spending my college budget for Michelle's fancy school, I compiled everything. Mom sat there silently. But as I spoke, her attitude changed from uncomfortable to defensive. She slumped back in her chair and stated she'd done her best when I finished. She claimed it was more about ensuring Michelle and Sam felt supported than about substituting me, saying Ethan encouraged her to give his children top priority since they needed stability following the divorce. She blamed him for some of the choices. She brushed aside my observation that her decisions had rocked my life, claiming I had my father to lean on. That's when I started talking about the money. Years later, I questioned her about how she explained using my college funds for Michelle's tuition and then purchasing her a brand new car. Her justification was she considered me better off with my father managing my bills. Saying I was smart and hardworking and would figure things out, she added she expected I wouldn't miss the money. Her easy dismissal of it as if it were no great issue astounded me. Ethan turned up before I could say anything else. He strolled right to our table and sat down, so he had to have known about the meeting. He began berating me for being unappreciative and self-serving without pausing. He asserted I was trying to guilt-trip Mom and attacking her. His swooping in to shape the story and make himself the victim followed the same pattern I had witnessed for years. By then, I had had enough. Rising, I collected my belongings and said to them both, I was done. I was not going to sit there and let Ethan spin the discussion into another pity party for him and his children. Mom called after me, but I continued on walking. I was not going to commit more of my time or energy to them. A few days later, I began receiving notes from relatives. A few of them had heard about the meeting and contacted me to provide their support. A few even expressed regret for not intervening sooner, acknowledging they had seen how I was treated but not wanting to become involved. It was mixed feelings. Although some confirmation felt good, it also made clear how long I'd been coping with this by myself. Then Mom sent me an SMS ultimatum. She advised me to accept the family as it is or run the danger of being cut off totally. It stung. Not surprising, but still stung. I didn't reply. I decided instead to go no contact with her totally. I banned Ethan's number as well as Michelle's and Sam's. Drama and backtracking were not something I wanted any longer. Ethan could not, of course, leave it alone. He started posting more on social media, leaving vague remarks regarding entitled family members who don't know how to let go of the past. Some extended family members joined in liking and remarking in agreement, but others messaged me privately to indicate they were on my side. I turned aside everything of it. Engaging would just give him more gasoline. My therapist and friends started to be my lifeline in the meantime. They reminded me that severing links was more of a means of self-preservation than of selfishness. I began once more paying close attention to my job and developed a new passion for photography. It developed into a means of focusing my efforts towards something artistic and rewarding. My therapist noted my development in one of our sessions of treatment. She noted that establishing limits, even difficult ones, is evidence of development. I felt, for the first time in years, that I was writing my own tale rather than allowing Mom and Ethan to write it. A few weeks later, I at last chose to forward the letter I had penned to Mom. It was not about peacemaking. I knew the ship had passed. The letter served as my means of closing the chapter and of stating everything I needed to without anticipating a reply. I sent it and turned around, not looking. That letter signaled the end of my emotional participation in the relationship. Now I was not expecting an apology or hoping for change. Whether with or without my mom, I was ready to go forth. I didn't expect a sincere response or any kind of spectacular gestures once I wrote that letter to Mom. Deep down, though, some part of me felt I may at least get a text, an apology, something. Nothing surfaced. Days stretched into weeks. And the quiet simply confirmed what I already knew. She was not going to change. The absence of a reply confirmed my choice to proceed forward. I began by totally severing relationships. Ethan, Michelle, and Sam were unfriendly and blocked on all social media. Their posts did not appeal to me, and I wanted no one else snooping on mine. Not long after, I learned of Ethan's response. The irony wasn't lost on me when extended family members began contacting me to let me know he was enraged, calling me immature and accusing me of trying to erase the family. That same man had been excluding me for years. Not long after, Mom tried to moderate. She messaged me not to reconcile, but rather chastised me for producing unnecessary drama by blocking her husband and stepchildren. She said it was rude and charged me with making everyone's life more difficult. I answered with a brief strong response, underlining once more that I had no desire in keeping ties with those who treated me less than family. I left it at that. Her only reply was a nebulous remark on how I would regret cutting ties someday. Unbelievably, a couple of uncles and aunts contacted me personally to show their support. They assured me they knew why I had removed myself and even expressed their own annoyance with Ethan's actions over the years. One uncle stated he hadn't wanted to get involved even though he'd always felt Ethan had an agenda to drive me out. Their letters provided a little solace, a reminder that not every member of the family considered me as the villain Ethan was depicting. I turned myself into my work in the meantime. Although the earlier promotion had come with extra obligations, I discovered that focusing on my work was a nice diversion. My work was not overlooked. My supervisor began to acknowledge me, and a few months later, I was assigned the lead on a significant project. Having something in my life totally mine, apart from the drama involving Mom's relatives, felt fantastic. I got in touch with several cousins I hadn't spoken to in years around this period. As it happened, I was not the only one having problems with Ethan. One cousin described feeling excluded from family functions, and another informed me about Ethan's spreading of rumors about him following a small argument. Bonding over our common annoyances drew us closer and seemed like I was reclaiming a piece of the family I had feared I had lost. Ethan, of course, never let up. Through mutual friends, I discovered he was circulating tales about me, calling me a bad son, and asserting I was only severing relations because I was jealous of his children. I decided against participating. Reacting would simply provide him more gasoline. I resolved not to sink to his level. In treatment, I discussed all that had happened and how I was managing it. My therapist noted my great improvement in establishing limits and giving my health top priority. Hearing it let me realize how far I had come from beginning treatment. I was not the same person who had labored years to get Mom's approval. At last, I was treating myself first. Over all of this, my father remained a continual source of inspiration. He told me one evening of his pride in my development and fortitude. Though it seemed little, it meant the world to me. All else, I had his constant support, which was plenty. Unexpected contact offered some closure I never knew I needed. Michelle crossed my path in a coffee cafe close by my workplace. She saw me, froze, then turned away fast as if she had not seen me. Though it was uncomfortable, it made one thing quite clear. Our relationship was irreparable, and I was cool with that. When I considered all that had transpired, my early years kept coming back to me. Though I had gone through so much, it had also strengthened me, acknowledging my own fortitude. I felt good about how I had handled such a trying circumstance. The chance for a new beginning arrived unannounced. My firm gave me an opportunity to move to a new branch in another city. Though it was a significant action, it felt like the ideal approach to end this chapter of my life. I turned down the offer, then started getting ready for my next round of travel. Though it was the one I needed, this was not the finale I had in mind from childhood. In years, I felt free for the first time. Changing cities was exactly the reset I needed. My first several weeks were a frenzy of unpacking, neighborhood exploration, and habit development. Being at a place where no one knew my story and where I could just be myself, free from the weight of my family's turmoil, was energizing. Through business, I began going to networking events. On a whim, I even joined a rock climbing group. Though I was not very good at it, learning anything new made me feel successful. The group was friendly, and soon I was befriending people who also loved adventure and personal development. Every ascent seemed symbolic, as if I was one foothold at a time, bidding farewell to my past. Mom broke the quiet couple of months in. I was surprised when she sent me a protracted email, though the tone was regretful as I went over it. I saw how much of it was about defending her behavior. He talked about how difficult it was to balance two families, how he thought I'd understand, and how he'd always tried his best. He admitted a few errors but framed them as required sacrifices for the greater good of his new family. It didn't sit right with me. The email seemed more like an effort to relieve her own guilt than an apology. Real responsibility was absent, and there was no recognition of the harm her decisions had done. Having twice read it, I chose not to respond. Engaging would merely reopen injuries I was trying to heal. I moved on, leaving the email unopened. Not long afterward, Michael abruptly contacted me. He asked me to go to his wedding. It was almost here. He presented it as a chance to repair the family. Given our years apart, the conversation was tense. It felt more like an obligation he was trying to meet than like a real olive branch. I gently turned down, knowing that my presence would only make matters awkward for all those involved. Word of my rejection spread fast. Ethan responded rather poorly as expected. A cousin told me he was once more calling me selfish and blaming me for causing division in the family. By now, it was almost humorous. I always played the villain in his story regardless of what I did. Rather than allowing it to consume me, I saw it as more evidence that staying apart was the wise decision. At work, meanwhile, things were running better than they had ever done. I was assigned leadership of a sizable initiative that turned out to be rather successful. I received an award for my contributions at the quarterly conference of the corporation. It was a proud moment that confirmed I was doing something significant for me, entirely outside of my family's troubles. Not long afterward, my father flew to see me. Having him present to celebrate my achievements felt like the best affirmation, as he had been my main supporter over this whole process. Over the weekend, we explored the city, tried new eateries, and reminisced over the distance traveled. He reminded me I was thriving, not merely existing. My therapist asked me during one of our sessions whether I would not require frequent visits going forward. He noted how much I had developed in controlling my feelings and establishing reasonable limitations. It seemed like a turning point, evidence that I was really headed forward. Knowing I could always return if necessary, I chose to pause therapy. During my path toward closure, I gave a local charity an old souvenir from my mom. I had kept this little sentimental object for years, but letting it go felt significant, as if I were shedding the last bit of emotional weight connected to our connection. In a sense, I hadn't anticipated. It was liberating. One of Ethan's cousins sent an unannounced note. They said several members of the family had noticed Ethan's manipulation for years and were sorry for not backing me earlier. They said they wanted me to know I wasn't alone, but they hadn't spoken up since they didn't want to start strife. Though it seemed little, hearing someone else affirm my experience meant a lot. I started seeing someone fresh about this time. Early days, yet the relationship felt different, better. I became aware of how much more secure I was in expressing my demands and establishing limits, something I had battled before. I felt, for the first time, as though I was creating something free from the weight of my family's past. Looking back on everything that had transpired, I became appreciative of the fortitude I had developed. Though it had been essential, cutting ties with my mom's family hadn't been simple, more focused, healthier, and happier than I had ever been. Although I couldn't turn back the past, I was glad of how I had seized control of my present. This was my story, not defined by the suffering I had gone through, but by the development and fortitude I had found within myself. This marks my fresh start.